Dr. Scott, what can parents do to prevent or at the very least reduce the chances of their teenager to fall into depression?
Well, as you know, depression is a very, very common in today's society. It's about double what it was 10 years ago. We now have, especially girls, who are more likely to be depressed than boys, interestingly. And the incidence of depression in girls is now 3 out of 5, according to the CDC. Clearly, 1/3 of girls, teenage girls, have seriously considered suicide. And so it's a shocking epidemic. And the question is, what can parents do to help prevent kids from falling into a depression? One of the things I work in the adolescent psych unit at Northwestern University Center DuPage Hospital, and one of the things I've observed is when I see a kid, I'll frequently say, what do you like to do? And the kids will say, well, everyone likes to do. Everyone has a passion for something. Everyone likes to do art or they like animals. They want to work in an animal shelter or something. They like writing. And I say to them, well, do your parents know what you like to do? And they say no. Universally, it's really interesting. And when I ask the staff in the psych unit, I say, how many of these kids have a purpose? None of them. No one has a purpose. So I started doing some research, and what got me interested in this in the first place was, my experience with a 13-year-old girl that I was called to see in the emergency room, which was very busy, and I saw the crowded stuff going on in the emergency room. As I was approaching the room where the girl was in, I could hear sobbing inside the room. And I opened the door, and there was the mom holding this lifeless hand on a 13-year-old beautiful girl that had just overdosed on her mom's medication, and she was sobbing uncontrollably. And it was a touching scene. And we had to hurry to get her some help. We did the intubation, we did the gastric sampling and suctioning all the pills out of her stomach as much as we could, and she survived. But that was one of the things that got me started on looking at what can I do to help parents and help anyone prevent a depression or get out of a depression. And one of the things we came across that is actually quite simple, and I'm trying to promote it everywhere I go, and that is purpose. If kids have a purpose, they don't tend to get depressed, or if they do get depressed, they tend to be less depressed, and it's one of the things that helps them out of it. Now, the American Psychiatric Association defines purpose as your passion. So kids have a passion, and then you direct that passion to their purpose. That becomes their purpose. And the purpose can change. It can be loving animals and interest in animals initially, and then a couple of years later, it can be drawing or something else. But if you have a purpose, then if you use that to help someone else or help someone in the world, that becomes very powerful for relieving or treating a depression. And it just makes sense. Think about a kid that wakes up in the morning, they're excited about going to the pet center where they volunteer to take care of the pets, and they've got a favorite pet there, and they're excited about life. When kids don't have a purpose that helps others, they frequently can more easily fall into a depression. So our recommendation for any of the parents or guardians or uncles or neighbors is to help. If you find a kid in trouble, and we'll describe what troubles kids can get into that would suggest a depression. If you can have them find their passion, talk with them about their passion, and then develop that passion into a purpose, that is so powerful. And you know what? It doesn't cost anything. It doesn't require pills. It doesn't require a psychiatrist. The things that we're facing these days with everyone, rushing to see mental health workers, you can't get in. I try to get someone into a psychiatrist that's profoundly depressed, and it takes 3 months to get a psych evaluation. And if you want to get some counseling, it's about 3 or 4 months also. It's crazy. The statistics are that about 11 million people in this country who are depressed will not be able to get health care, traditional health care. So we thought that my son and I, who wrote our book, thought that if we can get people to realize that finding your purpose is so important, and then they can help someone pursue that, everyone can save a life. Now, how do you talk to a kid? You know, here, we have 7 kids. Kids come home from school, and what do you say? How was school? Fine. What'd you do? Nothing. You know, it's a total, you know, no conversation. So what do you do?
One syllable, one answer. Yes, no, fine, good.
That's right. So what we found what works for our kids is we live on a circle. Okay, it's a half-mile circle of homes, and we say let's go for a walk. So when you're going for a walk, it's a whole different thing. It's not yes or no. It's well, Dad, I've got some trouble with somebody at school, and they're bullying me, or things come out like that. My wife always was used to say when she drove kids to various events, it's like the kids in the back seat don't know that the driver is listening to what they're saying. And that for her was a great way to find out what's happening with your kids. So you have to find out what's happening with your kids. And then you have to help find out what their passion is. If you find their passion, you can help them pursue a purpose. Now, when I was a kid, my parents were very accommodating, almost too much so, to my various crazy ideas. And I can remember when I got interested in hot air balloons. So, they would take me around the Midwest to see hot air balloon festivals. And that was a lot of fun. I even rigged up a hot air balloon machine. What I did is I took a oil barrel. It had 2 holes in it, and I cleaned it out real well so it wouldn't blow up when I put the lighted the fire inside of it. But I put hot coals in there. I took the vacuum cleaner, reversed the vacuum cleaner so it would be blowing out, and I stuck it into one hole, and then the hot air would come out the other hole. And I took a weather balloon and stuck it onto the exit of the hot air, and it never flew because the hot air cooled off too fast. But they were accommodating. They helped me pursue that passion, and I think what that did for me is it gave me the sense that I can pursue things even as an adult, and they may be crazy things, but they gave me the confidence, and that's what parents need to do. They need to help their kid develop their passion. Now, for other folks like uncles or friends, it doesn't always have to be a lot of time. I'm going to tell you a story about one of my grandkids. We've got a bunch of. We just had a baby last week. We have 13 grandkids now, and
Congratulations on the new member of the family.
thank you. And the 2 grandkids that I was visiting in Phoenix thought they might want to go fishing. So I said, okay, let's go fishing. You know how many water holes there are in Phoenix to go fishing? There are about 2, I think. We went
Yeah.
we went to the park in the center of Phoenix, where everyone goes, and we decided to do some fishing. So we got some fishing poles. The kids, were casting, and unfortunately, no one got hooked in the ear. No one was hurt. I didn't have to, get a hook out of a face. We hooked a bunch of trees and other shrubs and things, and we spent about 2 hours. We never saw a fish. We never caught anything. And I thought this is a total bust. What a waste of time. But you know what happened? 2 years later, one of the kids that I had taken fishing said, Grandpa, you know that fishing trip that we took 2 years ago? I said, yes. And he said, that was the best day of my life.
Wow.
You never know what influence you have on kids, and they've loved fishing ever since. So you can ignite a spark that then takes a person into their passion and their purpose, and not spend a ton of time doing that. So the bottom line, I think, is if you can help a kid, your kid, a neighbor, whatever, find their passion and pursue a purpose that may help others, that is so powerful. And like I said, it's free. Now, I can tell you a little bit about what to look for in your kids if you want, about what are the signs of a depression. So
Sure.
um, you know uh, a chemical depression. People have your pet dies. You get a little depressed over that. That's just kind of a reactive depression. That's not a chemical depression. That's not a true depression. The true depressions will look something like this. Your kid comes home, they go into their room, they close the door, they don't want to do anything. Their homework suffers. They don't want to meet with their friends. They lost interest in their activities. They lost interest in the sports that they were pursuing. They look down. They don't make good eye contact. It's one of the things we look for in the office. Is a kid making eye contact, or are his eyes on the floor all the time? They feel down in the dumps. If you talk with them, they they'll sometimes, if it gets worse, pursue thoughts of death, and talk about death and dark things. Um, and so those are some of the things you look out for when you see that happening. One of the things that we always ask is, are you depressed? And then, have you thought about doing yourself in? Have you thought about committing suicide? And it's surprising some of the answers you get. Um, so you have to ask that, because a kid could be right at the edge of committing suicide, and you don't even know it. I had one kid that I asked that question to in the office, and he said, well, and he seemed like a pretty reasonable kid. He didn't seem like he was that depressed. And he said, the other day I went into my dad's study, and he has a gun, a pistol in his drawer, and he has bullets in the other drawer. And I got the gun out and put it on the desk, and I got the bullets out and put them on the desk too. And I started to load the gun, and then I realized that maybe I didn't want to do this at this point. That's a kid that needs help immediately, because when you have, you ask about, do you have a desire to commit suicide or a thought about that? And then the next thing you ask is, do you have a plan? What's your plan? If they have a plan, they've thought about this for a while, and that's really a red flag that they need help immediately. And even though I'm talking a lot about pursuing your passion and those kinds of things, there's a place for medication, there's a place for psychiatry, there's a place for counseling, and those are not mutually exclusive things. And when a kid is profoundly depressed, they need help, and that frequently involves medication, which I prescribe medications all the time to kids and adults for depression. Refer them to psychiatric care. Counseling can be as effective as medication in many cases, for helping a depression. So those are the things you look out for, and the red flags. And if you can pay a little attention to the kids, that makes a huge difference. What's happened in our society, Daniel, is that everyone's busy. The interest rates, the inflation, everything is making life harder for families, and it's harder to spend. When you got two parents working, they're busy, they're tired. It's hard to delve into the kids very much. Many parents do, and it's wonderful, but that's one of the problems that we have in our society. Everyone's too busy to devote something to the kids to help them pursue their passion. So it's a problem. It's a tough problem.
Yeah, and there was a lot of information there and a lot of different things that I felt it was not only very valuable, but I would like to dive into different ones. But
Sure.
let's start with the last thing you said, which is true. A lot of everyone is busy, and people's attention span have been reduced significantly. So it's even I cannot imagine what a parent is handling their teenagers at this moment, where teenagers have their own distractions, adults have their own distractions. How do you know whether your son or daughter is having a real and concerning mental health, or just having that normal hormonal behavior of teenagers? Because you had 7 kids, and I remember when I was a teenager, it was a nightmare. It's not an easy phase for anybody. So if you right away assume, it's just normal, she's just having her whatever puberty, or he's having his puberty, then we tend to ignore the signs that you were mentioning.
Yes.
um, and that is very concerning, because I think that in society we are very reactive instead of being preventive.
Exactly. And that's been my point all along, that we are treating the problem when we should be preventing the problem in the first place. And some of the things that, everyone's busy, all parents, and I'm not uh, uh, down, making a negative comment about parents. Parents do the best they can almost all circumstances, but what are the things you can do to be able to spend a little more time with your kid? One of the things that we've tried to do as a family is have a dinner together. Everyone's busy; they've got baseball games and soccer and everything else, but we try to sit down for about a half hour every day as a family together and talk. And that's a great time to talk, to kind of tease out what's going on in the kids' lives. And And then you can look for some of those signs that we talked about before: feeling down in the dumps, not participating in talking, being holed up in the room, grades dropping, feeling, crying more than usual. And so that would be one of the things that you can do that's not going to require any additional time. Everyone eats, so you might as well see if you can get together with the family. It's not always, you can't always do it because we've had as many as 7 baseball games in one night. So with our 7 kids, some double headers and so forth. So it gets
Okay.
crazy. But if you can try to do meals together, that's very helpful. And then, all of our kids have loved to take a walk with dad. And so that is, it's just a time when you can just let it all hang out and relax a little bit. And, you don't need to quiz anyone. Stuff comes out, how you doing, or what you're thinking about, or, what are your plans? And, when a kid says, I don't have any plans, or I'm not happy with school, or my grades are bad. Those are some of the things that make that red flag go up and make you want to pursue getting some help. And it's not unreasonable to get help from your doctor, from a psychiatric facility, from a psychiatrist or counselor. But you can start. We talked about the preventive thing. The preventive thing starts at home, and you can frequently ward off a depression by having a kid get his passion involved with something, and have them discover a purpose in their life. And the parents have to have a purpose too. You have to model a purpose. So if the parents don't have a purpose in life, the kid is less likely to do that. So it involves the parents finding something that they love to do and that they're passionate about. And the kids will emulate that in many cases, and not whatever their passion is, but emulate that idea that I need to get a passion and pursue a purpose in my life.
Yes, and I like that part that we're definitely gonna be touching um in a few minutes when it comes to the purpose and passion, and how the teenagers can, or how can parents help their teenagers pull themselves out of depression by having this. But on the flip side would be, what are the main causes of depression in teens?
Oh, there's a couple big ones, and with the pandemic that hit, the incidence of depression, prevalence of depression doubled basically. And one of the things that happened in the pandemic was social media. People stopped getting together, they stopped being face to face, and they started using social media more and more. And social media is great to stay connected with people. It's got, just like everything in life, it's got its goods and its bads. The bads on social media are that everyone that's on social media, it seems, is perfect. I've got the perfect vacation, I've got the perfect clothes, I've got the perfect family, and no one's like that. And if you try to emulate the people that are doing that on social media, you'll be depressed. And people begin to realize that when you see someone else doing something, if you're not doing that, you must be inferior. And so that's part of the social media problem. The other problem is um, bullying is a big issue. The incidence of suicide in people that are bullied is 2 to 9 times more than the average person. That's according to the
Wow.
CDC. So it's huge. Bullying is a huge issue. I'll never forget my daughter, little Jordan, was being bullied on the bus by one of the boys, and this is in grade school. And in our family, the older ones tend to look after the younger ones. I mean, it's just it's their that's one of their purposes in life. And my son Nathan, who's a big time football player, uh, noticed that Jordan was pretty despondent, didn't want to get on the bus, didn't want to go to school. So one day he dressed up in his jersey and his football pads, and got on the bus with Jordan, and he's about 6 years older and looks like a monster. He's just a big guy. And he said to Jordan, "Who's the kid that's giving you a hard time?" And Jordan pointed the kid out in the back of the bus, and he went back there and face to face he said, "That's my sister. If you give her a hard time, you're going to answer to me from now on." And that was all it took. The bullying stopped. But bullying is easier to do on social media than it is in face to face. You're not likely going to put a person down face to face, but when you're semi anonymous on social media, it's easier to do that. So that's one of the things that social media has contributed to is the bullying, and then the feeling that you're not as good as everyone else. Um, those so social media is the one that's a big one. Bullying is the other one, both social media and in school and whatever. Academics is a big one too. It's interesting. We close our adolescent psych unit in the summertime. Do you believe that? We have this unit that holds about 14 to 16 kids, and it's closed down. No one comes into the psych unit almost in the summertime. So we close it down. If the kids are if kids need to be hospitalized, they go into the adult unit, and there's very few kids in the adult unit. So the academic pressure is a big one too for kids, and you need to realize that they're trying to keep up with the other kids in the class. They're trying to do academics, and it's a stress. The other thing is, especially nowadays, Daniel, with the inflation and people are struggling to make ends meet, and more, we've got 7 kids out of the house. They're all working. We try to have a low bar of success. No one's in jail, so that's so that's our low bar of
That's a win.
success. But a lot of our kids aren't well off, and they're struggling to make ends meet. And when you don't have enough money, money is one of the most important discussions that parents have that can be a contentious. And so when there's a lot of contention in the home, the parents aren't getting along, the money situation is awful. That is a big stressor for kids too. So and then there's 100 other things. Some kids, you always ask when you see a kid about their heredity. Who in the family is depressed, and it's not uncommon that, oh yeah, my mom has a depression, my grandmother was bipolar, my uncle committed suicide. So it's not uncommon to see a genetic tendency toward a depression too. So that's one of the things that can contribute. But the things that we talked about are the big ones: social media, bullying, and academics, and the home situation. So.
Yeah, I think that we can agree on that. At least to me, social media brings more like a net negative in society.
Yes.
I understand people can share things, but even in adults, even in grown ass men that understand this, still feel that pressure. It's not that somebody has an amazing vacation, but somebody has this amazing career or making this much money, and we feel the pressure that, well, we're not good enough, that we are lame, that we're losers, that we are not reaching our full potential. So I can totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Bullying is something, as you mentioned, when you're behind a screen, when you're semi anonymous, you can say all the kinds of crazy things. And I've been on social media, been on Twitter and Instagram, and the comments are brutal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of them are funny, but you realize, well, there's another person, there's a human on the other side that is suffering a lot. And in this case, I do feel that that is so hard to even prevent, because everyone has a smartphone, everyone has a an app, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, any of those. And I remember when I was, luckily for me, the only social media I had, it was all on my senior year of high school. The only thing was Facebook. And even then, I could see how friends of mine would just go to parties or go to the movies. I wasn't never invited. So I could, even just that mild thing, I would feel very depressed and sad that I wasn't part of the group. Now, you mentioned earlier about a clinical depression, because here's the thing. Here's my thing. At least with my dad, he thinks on in his mind, if you don't have a chemical imbalance in your brain, right, then you're just sad. You're not depressed. And it was so hard for me to even open myself up and then tell me, hey, I'm depressed. In fact, I hid as a kid, as because I went through depression when I was in high school for a few months, in college for a few months, and now in my early 30s, I've been dealing with depression for the last 2 years. And I remember telling him, and in his mind was, well, most people are not depressed, they're just sad. So I feel that there's a lot of misconception when it comes to parents, that unless you have a clinical issue, then you're not depressed, you're just sad. What are the difference between just what a lot of parents think being sad, and actually being depressed without having that chemical imbalance in your brain?
And most Medical depressions are chemical change in the brain. Serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine, those kinds of things change. And when we give kids and parents and adults medications, they restore some of those neurotransmitters, which then lifts the depression, which is why it takes about a month for those medications to work, because it's not like giving a tranquilizer that just calms you down. That works immediately. But these drugs restore the neurotransmitters. So most true medical depressions are related to the neurotransmitters in the brain. So it's a chemical change. Now, sadness, everyone has episodes of sadness. That's part of life. You get a D on your paper, and you expected that you thought you'd get an A, and so that makes you a little sad. Or there's a death in the family. Now that's a frequent cause of sadness, and it can lead to a depression. But that those the sadness generally is a temporary thing, and you're not in that state all the time. People that are depressed tend to be depressed pretty much all the time. They may have little variations, but unless you have a bipolar where sometimes you're real high and sometimes you're really low, most depressions are there for a long time unless they're treated. So and they are chemical. They can be related to genetics. So sadness is usually temporary, not long lasting. Doesn't lead to suicide, but a true depression it can. And the true depression again is feeling sad, more crying, loss of interest in outside activities, difficulty with sleep. Either you sleep too much or too little. Not your grades go down. You find yourself crying. And you don't tend to take care of yourself. Your hair is not combed. You're not putting makeup on if you're a girl. Those kinds of things are things that are more typical for a true depression versus just sadness. So there's a big difference.
It's almost like the feeling of hopelessness that is just like, well, what's the even point? And I can relate to a lot of those kids or even people in general, because I grew up in an environment where I was always told, and I've shared this on the podcast in the past, that those people who committed suicide were just cowards, people that didn't want to face life challenges and all of that. And that was my concept of suicide. Later in life, when I experienced like deep, deep, true depression, when making it through the day was very, very hard, I understood those people. I understood like you just want the pain to go away. You don't want to kill yourself, but you just want the pain to go away.
And they think,
Luckily, even uh-huh.
yeah, they think they're a burden to everyone else. I'm a burden, so they would be much better off without me. And I'm doing them a favor by ending my life because then they'll be happier. They'll be better. And that's also the thought that people that are considering suicide are thinking. So I'm sorry.
Yeah, luckily for me, even though I had the intrusive thoughts, the ideas, right? But it was no more. I never truly consider, and I feel lucky about that, because I know that a lot of people, their brain goes exactly as you mentioned with this kid, just planning that, okay, this is how I'm going to do it.
That's the key. That's
This
the key right there. Do you have a plan? I'm going to take my father's gun out of the desk drawer and blow my brains out, or I'm going to step in front of a train. Those are my plans. That is much more serious than just thinking about suicide, as you know.
100%. And one thing that you said that really impacted me, right? Because I thought it was the opposite. You said that most girls, and maybe when it comes to teenagers, suffer more and they have suicidal thoughts. But one thing I've been wanting to focus a lot on this podcast is a lot of mental health, especially among men, because men tend to be more closed. Men don't share their emotions and their feelings. And I was looking at the CDC numbers, at least for 2022, and close to 50,000 people committed suicide that year, and close to 80% of those were men. But it seems like we're focusing on men commit more suicide, maybe because they're more violent, they just jump off a bridge or just use a gun. Girls like that 13-year-old girl you interacted with years ago, she took pills, so there you still have chances of saving that life. But it seems like that that girls are catching up with boys when it comes to having suicidal thoughts and executing them.
That's absolutely true. About twice as many girls are depressed compared to boys. But I just looked up a statistic from the CDC. Men are almost 4 times more likely to commit suicide and finish the act that compared to women. And what I see in the psych unit is many times the girls are just crying for help, and they'll do things like cutting. Cutting is a real, it's a kind of a thing that you see. And, cutting is where you take a razor or something and make, pretty much linear cuts in your forearms. Now, if you want to commit suicide and use cutting, the what people have done is to cut into one of the arteries, the radial artery, and then you bleed to death within a minute or two. So, but they're not doing that. They're not cutting deeply into their wrist. They're crying for help. And the same is true with taking pills. It's not uncommon that we'll have a girl that comes into the psych unit and will take some pills, and then she'll call her girlfriend and say, I'm really depressed. I just took a handful of pills. Well, the girl then calls the police, and the person's saved. So that's why many girls, I think, are not actually finishing the deed. Where the boys are, you're right, they tend to be more quiet. They're more reserved. They don't tend to tell their emotions to very many people, and they get to the point where I'm worthless. I'm not. Everyone hates me. My ending my life will be a favor to my parents and everyone around me, and that's what I'm going to do. And they do it. And the what happens with boys is they really get into the things that will end their life, and not there's no saving. That's firearms. 54% of people commit suicide with firearms. 25% by hanging or similar kinds of strangulation things, and 12% by poisoning, which is usually pills. So, and the boys tend to gravitate toward those things where there's no, you shoot yourself in the head, and most of the time that's it. We've had we've had some saves where people kind of miss and they blow out their sinus or something, which is kind of unfortunate. But most of the time, when the person puts a gun to their head, that's it, and that's what the boys tend to do more so than the girls, and it's sad. So we need to, even though the boys are less likely to be depressed, when they are depressed, they're more likely to commit suicide and complete the act.
Yeah, no, it's very very sad, and I feel that those rates of depression and suicide are just skyrocketing right now.
They are.
But how do we know? How do we know? And this is just, I guess, hard to tell that men are not as depressed as women, or boys are not as depressed as girls, when boys tend to keep everything inside. Because and this is just a question that comes from curiosity and humility, because I remember when I was even 2 years ago, when I was living in hell inside, I would go out and work out with a group of people, and I was wearing a facade. Nobody could tell how much I was in pain. And when I realized that, I started looking outside and seeing other people, say, I wonder how many people are going through the same stuff, but they're not sharing anything, and nobody is aware. So if I had killed myself 2 years ago, people would have never known. I mean, it would have come out of nowhere. It's like nobody would have seen it coming. So I guess, how can people help? Whether you're a parent, whether you're a friend, whether you are a teacher, these boys that are not as vocal or as loud as girls, loud in a way that a girl will call a girlfriend, hey, I'm very depressed, I'm taking pills. Boys will just say, I'm embarrassed about feeling this way, I'm going to go take my life.
Good. That's an excellent question. The thing that the people that are close to the boy or the girl need to do is talk with them. And things come out. Those rides that my wife takes with the kids in the back seat talking to each other, those are clues. And a person will frequently say something about, they're not going to say I'm depressed necessarily, but they're going to have those clues about my grades are not as good, or they're not wearing clothes that are washed, or their hair is not combed, or things like that. Those are the things you watch out for. So the people that are responsible for those kids need to pay attention, and that can be grandparents, it can be a neighbor, it can be the parents. So you look for all those signs of depression, and then you talk to the kids. And it doesn't have to be a long talk. We have like I said, a half mile around. We do 2 laps, And I can get a world of information from our kids with those two laps. And they'll frequently, if you delve into what's on their mind, they'll frequently feel better when people express their emotions and talk about what's going on. And you kind of say, well, this is a normal, or this is not normal, or whatever, or we need to get you some help. They'll feel better. So you look for the signs that we talked about, and then you communicate with your kids, because if you're not communicating, then something like you mentioned can happen, and all of a sudden someone kills themselves, and you just are blown away because you never saw it coming, but you never got into the kid's head by just casual talking or observing what's going on with them. And that's hard to do, again, because everyone's so busy, everyone's stressed out. If you're not making enough money and you have to struggle to make ends meet, and you're working two jobs, and you're not getting along with your spouse because the money situation is bad, it's hard to do everything. But again, try to build in those little things. Take a ride with the kid, do a walk with the child. Those are the things that will clue you in, so that you don't get surprised all of a sudden there's a serious disaster that happens.
Yeah, and I do feel, yeah, it's definitely hard. It's harder now than ever. As you said, everyone is busy, the economy, everyone is trying to make ends meet, all of that. But another factor that I've thought about while we were having this conversation is we have a major communication issue. We don't know how to communicate. It's hard for us to have hard conversations. So imagine that there are parents out there who are oblivious to what their kid is going through, or they don't know how to ask the right questions. What are the type of questions that you can ask a kid without seem very intrusive, that could sort of eventually lead you to, oh, this is information that I need to know exactly how he or she is doing mentally?
Yeah, and you're right. You don't want to be intrusive. You don't want to say, "Are you depressed?" Or well, you can say that, but you don't want to quiz the kids so that they shut up and they don't talk with you at all. You make it part of your routine. We take a walk with the dog a couple times a week, and things come out when you do that kind of stuff. Or when you take let's take a ride to Home Depot, and let's go together, or let's go to a ice cream shop and have a malt or something together. And then with casual conversation, things come out. Almost always that if the kid again, you look for those signs of looking down, no eye contact, unkept of hair and so forth. School grades going down. Those are the signs that you look for. So it doesn't have to be a quizzing session. Those never work. Again, the same thing happens when you start that. That happens when the kid comes home. How was the school? Well, it was fine. Do anything today? No, didn't do anything. You okay? Yeah, I'm fine. So, but you have to have get those casual conversations going, and things come out when you do that. You have to build it into your lifestyle, so it doesn't require a huge block of time, but a little ride somewhere, a little walk somewhere. Um, those are the things. And then, if the kid is crying, that's a great opportunity to come in and say, what's wrong? How can I help you? And those are the times that you take advantage of to get into the kid's head a little bit, and see what's going on with them. So, and those are the little opportunities that you can't overlook, even though you're crazy busy.
As you mentioned earlier, most parents are trying their best. Nobody teaches us how to raise a kid in a healthy way. Well, especially from an emotional and psychological level. And they're doing the best, and they're a lot of them have like two full-time jobs, and they're trying to make ends meet, and they're trying their best to give their kids the best opportunities and care and all of that.
Yeah.
But yes, I guess that if parents just could allocate, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes a day just to, in an intentional way, to have a conversation about their kid, anything, if it could be for them for the parents start sharing things about their life, and maybe the kid just trying to find a back and forth without the kid feeling, okay, here we are again.
Yeah.
They're asking me the questions, and all of this. So hopefully a lot of parents can realize that it doesn't take much, but it does take some consistency for the kid to start feeling more comfortable to talk about his or her issues.
And if you have a routine and you can build it into your routine, that works too. We walk the dog, uh, you know, uh, uh, every night. And so you grab a kid and have the kid go with you when you walk the dog. The dinners are a big thing. You know, when the family sits down and has dinner, we've lost the family dinner. Everyone's so busy. You got so many sports to go to do. That's so important, I think, for a family to sit down together and have a dinner, and those kinds of things will come out at those events. So it doesn't have to be anything structured necessarily. It's just, you know, and the kids get turned off. You know, well, we're going to have our quizzing session now. You know, how are you doing? And you know that turns everyone off. But if it's something, fishing is fun. You know, when we go fishing with the kids, they'll frequently open up about what's happening in their lives when you're sitting there trying to catch a fish, which no one catches anymore, and you know, those kinds of things. So if you can use the little things in life, like the meals and the walks and the little events and even the car rides. You know, if you take a car ride for 15 minutes somewhere, a lot of stuff comes out. You know, people just don't sit in the car and not talk. If you know, it's one on one with you and your child, for example. And you know, this can involve neighbors. It can involve uncles and aunts. It doesn't grandparents. Um, you know, I've one of my other grandchildren. I was, you know, I could tell he was a little bit on the downside, and we talked about chess club. I was a nerd in high school and grade school, and I belonged to the chess club. And I said, you know, you probably like. I said you'd probably like chess. You should look into it. And you know, about a month later, he was one of the kids in Phoenix again, a different child. He got involved with chess, and he started to love it. And now he plays in chess tournaments. He's one of the champions in his school, and you know, it really turned him on. So it's little things like that you can sometimes suggest that change a life. And you know, people that are listening to this can change a life. If you see someone that's in trouble, uh, do the things that we talked about. Get to know them a little bit. Uh, get to pursue their passions. Help them pursue their passions, and you literally could save a life. There's a lot of kids out there. 1/3 of girls, teenage girls, have seriously considered suicide. You know, if you find someone like that your neighbor, your grandchild or your niece or nephew, uh, get to know them a little bit better and pursue their passion. Help them pursue their passion, and that is huge. You literally can save lives by doing that, and it doesn't cost a thing.
Yeah, and I like that a lot. And I'm glad that you touch once again, and we can come back to the purpose and passion thing, because when I was reading um, this idea of yours of that we can help teens or any person in general to pull themselves out of depression by giving them or by helping them pursue their passion or their purpose or having a sense of direction. But when I was reading that, I realized that in my case I didn't have a passion or a purpose for many years of my life. It's just I never dedicated one thing, like a full-time one thing, even when I was 14, 16. In fact, I end up finding my passion or sort of what my passion is or what my calling was, just to having a podcast and start talking to interesting people and get to know them and help others by their stories. But I was already 31, and at that point I feel like it's so hard because a lot of kids, even adults, I have friends who are in the mid 20s, late 20s, early 30s, that have no idea what they want to do in life, have no purpose in life. How do they find passion, and how can we help even teens when you as a kid, you haven't experienced enough of life to know exactly what you want to do for a living or finding that purpose?
That's the key. You mentioned the key right there, and that is experience enough. People need to bring their kids or their people that they're looking out for, or a neighbor or whatever, to lots of different activities. You may go to the swim meet. You may talk to them about playing chess and go to a chess tournament. Uh, for me, my parents brought me to the balloon festivals, and that was, that was exciting and fun. And you might get to meet people that are in that field. My granddaughter is interested in astrophysics, so I have a patient that's an astrophysicist, and I hooked them up with a Zoom call, and she was so turned on that it was fun to see how turned on she was by talking to an actual astrophysicist. So you spend some time to give the kids or whoever it is, including the adults, exposure to lots of different things. You take them out to a horse farm to see horses. You take them to an animal shelter to see what they do in an animal shelter. Uh, you may start them on some piano lessons or something to see if they are interested in music, or get them involved with a band, kids band. You have to expose them to thousands of things, and something will frequently hit, like the podcasting. That's a phenomenal passion and purpose. And you're doing some good you not only have a passion and a purpose, but you're doing some good in the world. And that is so important to help people get out of a depression. When you wake up in the morning, you're excited about the interview you're going to have. You're excited about, getting some more people involved and listening to you. Those are the things. So expose your kids and expose those that you're looking out for, that you're concerned about, to thousands of things, and get them to meet people that are experts in those areas, and then they'll find something that they love, almost certainly. And sometimes they'll find lots of things. When I was a kid, I had so many interests, it was crazy. I was collecting rocks. I collected so many rocks that the drawers of my desk broke down because the rocks went through the bottom of the drawers. And but my parents, that was okay. You're okay. And so but that's what you need to do to find your purpose, and the parents need to find their purpose too. You're absolutely right. The kids will emulate the parents. If the parents have no direction in life, they're not going to be as happy. Jack Canfield, for example, says that if people develop a purpose, which sometimes requires a lot of doing to find your passion, they will be healthier and happier, both. It affects physical health and also mental health to have a purpose. And lots of authorities, lots of studies are done that corroborate that.
Yeah, and at first I didn't believe that much of the thing. I thought it was mostly like a spiritual, find your purpose and you'll be happy. But that idea with the podcast, it came out of nowhere. I had years ago the idea that I would love to interview people just to get to know them, but never really dabble into that. And last year, it just came back right back into my mind. It's like, this is what I'm supposed to do. I wasn't even seeking for that. And once I had direction and clarity, everything became slightly easier. I'm still depressed. I'm still battling with a lot of things in life. But as you said, it is easier to manage. It's easier to get up every morning because you know exactly what you want to do and what you need to do. So that is something that sadly a lot of people are lacking because it's hard. It's hard to find a purpose unless you have to experiment a lot.
You do. Exactly. And
And for yeah.
yeah, and you're doing some good in the world. That's part of that purpose too. If you have a purpose and you can use it to help someone else or do some good in the world, that goes a long, long way to relieving a depression. Now, it's not going to work for everyone. It's not going to be 100%, but uh, it's going to help a ton of people, and it's going to. I think that is the solution, one of the major solutions to our epidemic of depression in this country, especially among teenagers. But anyone.
Anyway, just find a hobby, a passion, or something that you really love to do, and just put your all your effort, attention, and time on it. So, Dr. Scott, you treat patients with depression nearly every day.
Yes,
How do you do it? How do you separate your emotions from their pain and suffering? Because I cannot even imagine how hard would it be to hear all these heartbreaking stories and what people are going through.
that's a good question. And that's true for any area. It's not just depression. I see people that have terminal cancers. And, how do you tell a person you've got pancreatic cancer and your life expectancy is going to be in terms of months and not years? I mean, those are all hard things to do. What keeps me going is to know that I can sometimes make a difference in these people's lives. And so a person that comes in with a depression, I I've done enough treatment. I know enough about what will help them get out of this, that I know that in the majority of cases, I can help them. So what's really gratifying for me is to see the person progress, get better and better and better, and get out of their depression. That's what keeps me going, and that's my purpose. Uh, to help people get better and have a happier life. And if I can do that, that turns me on, and that's again that's my purpose and my passion. So that's what keeps me going.
That's amazing. I was having a conversation with another person a few months ago on the podcast, and we were talking about what psychologists, psychiatrists, even oncologists do, and how much they help society, but also they deal with loss. Either a patient committed suicide, or just a patient was never able to get out of depression, or somebody wasn't able to beat cancer, and those take a toll on the physician. But they still work and they're still doing it, and to me it is mind blowing how people in that field can compartmentalize and just separate themselves from the suffering, even though I honestly don't know how you guys do it.
But you can't totally. You can't. When someone comes into the office and they're yellow from jaundice, from pancreatic cancer, and you know what's going on with them, you think about that. You may dream about it. You can't separate yourself totally, but the thing that you can do is realize that you can make a difference in their lives. You can maybe prolong their life a little bit longer. You can give them some hope. You can and help them be more comfortable with medications. So that's you know you're trained to be able to do these things to help people. And lots of people have looked into helping others. Lady Gaga, for example, who was very profoundly depressed, found that doing some acts of kindness to others not only helps the person that you're doing the kindness to, but it helps you more than that person. So if you pay attention to helping others, that is that goes back to you. You are a happier person when you're helping somebody else. There was a little ditty about paying a toll for somebody else in the toll booth, and one of the people that went through the toll booth paid the toll for the car behind them, and they had a good feeling. If you ever haven't done that, try that sometime. You go away and you feel, oh, I'm feeling pretty good. I wonder what that guy behind me is thinking, and the guy behind him was happy too, and he paid the toll for the guy behind him, and that went through about 50 cars that did that. And so when you're involved with doing some good for somebody else, and that's again part of this passion, purpose, and helping somebody in the world, you will be happy yourself. So by doing some good to somebody else, and I'll frequently, when a person comes in and they're depressed, I'll frequently turn them on to helping someone else. Is there anyone else that you can help? Is there someone in your family that's struggling? Yeah. Well, work on helping them, and all of a sudden you're feeling better about yourself. There's some studies that indicate if you do some good thing for a person every day, you will be much happier yourself, and it's really true. Think about that with the good things you've done for somebody else. This podcast, these podcasts that you do, must help a ton of people, and that must make you feel really good, like because you know that you're doing some good in the world here, and that's part of that relieving your depression, relieving anyone's depression.
Yeah, and I feel that you don't have to help the entire world. You just help one person, and that compounds. That one person helps another one. So it's just we tend to get overwhelmed by, well, the world is a mess. Nobody, I mean, everyone needs help and all of that, but just focus on one person, and that just by helping one person, it can help two people. I mean, yourself and the person you're helping, and that multiplies. And when it comes to the podcast, honestly, to me, was mostly about, I felt that I wasn't the only one, and if I could talk about my problems and how I dealt with them and how I can fix them and how can improve, a lot of other people will feel the same way and they will get that help almost indirectly, which to me it is worth doing.
There's lots of psychological literature on that very thing. And there's a book called The Butterfly Effect. And the butterfly effect states that if the butterfly flaps his wings in North America that could affect the weather in Spain, for example. And so your little actions of doing good and helping someone else, anyone, I'm talking about any action like that, uh, will have a will multiply, because the person that you're helping will feel good about themselves and they'll want to help someone else. And can you imagine what the world would be like if everyone was doing that? We wouldn't have wars. It would be a phenomenal thing. So just, you're absolutely right. Just focusing on one person can make a huge difference, and that can change the world. So, get involved with helping someone. You'll be happier. Anyone will be happier, and it'll make a huge difference in the world. Find your purpose.
Be more kind. Be more kind to people. Everyone will appreciate kindness. It costs nothing, but it does a lot for a lot of people. Dr. Scott, it's been a phenomenal conversation. But as a closing question, let's say you have one last piece of work to do. What is that piece of work and why?
Uh, I think my piece of work is to pursue my passion to do some good in the world. That's my goal, to do some good in the world. And if I can help each individual that I touch to be a little more positive, a little more optimistic, a little kinder, uh, that would be that would turn that's what turns me on. And I think we can all, through these podcasts, for example, reach out to a lot of people. So my first thing with the girl that I talked about, the 13-year-old, was to help her. But then I thought, how can I help other people? How can I spread the good news that purpose will make a difference? And then I wrote my book of the Clara's Magic Garden, about a little girl that is a little depressed and doesn't have friends and doesn't think she's pretty and so forth. Ultimately, evolves into a happy person, and that has I'm sure done some good. And then, these podcasts are, I think, reached lots of people, and I think the solution to our epidemic of depression today is to find your purpose, pursue your passion, find your purpose, and use it to help others. And that's exactly what you're doing, Daniel. And I congratulate you for it. And if I can do more talks like this, and encourage people to pursue that, I think the world will be better for me and for everyone.
I appreciate that. Dr. Scott Kolbaba, everybody. Where can people? I know that you have two books. You mentioned one. You mentioned Clara's Magic Garden, that is for kids, but you also have Physician Untold Stories. Where can people go and buy your books and keep in touch with what you're working on?
Amazon's probably the big thing for books these days. So they're available on Amazon. They're available also by email, in Barnes and Noble and lots of different booksellers. But it's mostly Amazon, I think, that they can find the books. To get in touch with me, clarasmagicgardenbook.com is our email, and that can call my office. I'm a physician. I'm an ordinary doc that works every day taking care of diarrhea and sore throats and low back pain and whatever else comes in the door. And my telephone number there is 630-668-5985.
Perfect. Yes, I'll add those to the video. I'll add to the show notes. And once again, it was a total pleasure and honor to talk to somebody who's so passionate about helping people who need it the most, who feel hopeless, who feel helpless, and they don't know where to turn to. And to me, that is something that really hits home. And I truly appreciate doctors like yourself that are working hard towards helping other people get out of it.
Thank you, Daniel. And I appreciate you, what you're doing too. I think we have share the same passion.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And once again, it was an honor.
Thank you.